guys, we should totally start thinking about our media ethics project due next week.
Melanie, I think it's a little more important to talk about the protests that are happening right now.
Yeah, you're right. I feel a little bad because I don't exactly know what's going on. Can someone fill me in?
I can fill you in on that. The president of the Ukraine didn't sign a trade agreement with the EU. However, this upset the people because they wanted to be more aligned with the European Union, so they took to protesting. And they gathered in the Independence Square of the Ukraine, and through the Twitter hashtag, they were able to successfully, unofficially rename the Independence Square to Euromaidan Square.
Wow, I had no idea social media was making such a giant impact.
Who wants to talk about discussing Egypt?
I do. The revolution was sparked by the desire to get rid of Hosni Mubarak, who held power in Egypt for over 30 years. According to the news group company, social media was able to connect many classes of people to create an even larger anti-government movement powered by both the rich and the poor. The entire social media aspect of the revolution actually began on Facebook, when a man named Wael Ghonim was inspired after a young man was brutally attacked and killed by Egyptian police. After that, the entire movement spread like wildfire due to all the social media presence.
The peaceful Egyptian revolution had a distinct goal, but no clear leader. Yet from the masses, a handful emerged, including Wael Ghonim. His tweets offered both a narrative and a nudge to protesters.
He's been sort of tweeting every day, almost every hour, and he's developed quite a mass of followers. He's become a figurehead of this revolt. I guess we can now call it a revolution.
It's generally acknowledged that Ghonim's Facebook page first sparked the protests. Titled "We Are All Khalid Said," it memorialized an Egyptian businessman who'd been beaten to death by police after threatening to expose corruption. The page called for protests on January 25th. That became known as the Day of Wrath, as thousands poured onto the streets. Ghonim's arrest by Egyptian authorities on January 28th and release 12 days later only added to his legend. When Ghonim is mentioned, usually his company is too.
Google executive Wael Ghonim created a Facebook page that
He's the Middle East and North Africa marketing manager at Google. So far, Google has commented only briefly. We can't comment on his personal beliefs. He's on leave at the moment, and we look forward to having him back at Google.
It's a little bit tricky here, this relationship here, because this is an employee of Google, yes, but he's acting on his own time.
Robert Solomon says companies in emerging markets like Egypt, where governments are big customers, need to be careful not to bite the hand that feeds them.
Is this connection likely a good thing or a bad thing for Google?
Well, on the one hand, it could be a bad thing to the extent that Ghonim's activities raise some questions or jeopardize some relationships that Google has in Egypt. However, it might be a good thing if people now view Google as a good place to work and a place that allows young people to have a voice.
A voice which ushered in a social revolution in Egypt, where the most powerful weapon was social networking.
Guys, there's this thing called ethical dilemmas. There are also known as moral dilemmas, and they usually revolve around situations in which there's a choice to be made between two options, and there's never really a good outcome. David and Melanie, you guys both mentioned and talked about Egypt and the Ukraine, but did you guys notice that there are ethical dilemmas present, like issues of verification and watchdog? Today, media has a less known basis of fact-checking, and it makes it easier to have false or invented facts out there. For example, in an online article from Poynter, the writer James Warren talks about the issues of social media and terrorism. For example, there was a widespread news reports about how ISIS had taken over the city of Derna, and it was actually false. And due to no one actually fact-checking, the world ended up believing it. And it kind of shows you that verification is necessary. Like, you should always double-check. You should always believe what one source says. Always fact-check. Like, that's the purpose of a journalist. In addition, there's the idea or basis of harassing and watchdogging, like on social media. For example, journalists and other users that are on social media have this tendency to see and sometimes witness mean and hurtful things being said, and they never say or do anything. They just kind of go along with it or just let it happen, and that could lead to potential conflict of interest or something, like if they do interfere. But I mean, if you see something, do say something. Okay?
Narrative fidelity! We can't forget about narrative fidelity! Narrative fidelity is when the public or media adhere to a certain story based on preconceived notions and life experiences. So since these people are thinking based on their life experiences, that's what was being tweeted. The Egyptians and Ukrainians involved already had preconceived notions about the government, so that's what was being covered by the press. Members of the Egyptian community shaped the narrative of the uprising through the use of Twitter to make sure that the government's angle wasn't the only one being broadcasted to the masses. The same goes for the Ukrainian uprising. The stories published were shaped by what the Ukrainians were tweeting, which were based on their lives in the Ukraine.
Calm down, guys. We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, you're right.
Wow, I totally agree. We really are passionate about this topic.
Gee, I wish someone recorded this. We have so much information.